Hi, welcome back to part two. So we are looking at different perspectives in film. And I was just talking to you about Rabbit Proof Fence and why it was such a significant film at the time and how it has really influenced society in thinking about the issue of the stolen generation, and it has really impacted on our understanding of the issue itself. Now, we were talking about different perspectives, and remember, a perspective is someone's attitude about something, basically their point of view about a particular issue. And so what I want to do now in this video is look at two different perspectives on whether or not Rabbit Proof Fence was actually good history or accurate. So the first perspective that we're looking at is Andrew Boldt's perspective. Now, Andrew Boldt is a journalist, and he is what we call a social and political commentator. So he likes to comment, give his 2 cents on lots of different social and political issues that are happening in society at the time. So he has worked for newspapers and has a column that he has been running in the Herald Sun for many, many years. So he is known to be controversial, somewhat racist, very conservative in his views, and highly opinionated. So this is his article that he wrote in 2002. So this was just after the film was released. Actually, I think it was just before. So he had seen the film premiere, and this was his response to the film. So I'm going to read it through, and you are welcome to follow along, and then I've got questions for you to do after that. So, Rabbit Proof Myths. Herald Sun, 14th February 2002, by Andrew Boldt. The truth of Australia's past is hard enough to face, and untruths and exaggerations now will only divide us. Philip Noyce claims his new film, Rabbit Proof Fence, is a true story. The Hollywood director's publicity blurb repeats the boast, a true story. Even the first spoken words in the hyped film, which opens next week, are, "This is a true story." Wrong. Crucial parts of this true story about a stolen generation's child called Molly Craig are false or misleading, and shamefully so. No wonder that when Craig saw Rabbit Proof Fence at a special screening in her bush settlement last month, she seemed surprised. "That's not my story," she said as credits rolled. No, it isn't. Instead, it is Craig's story told in a way that would help prove the stolen generations are no myth, that thousands of Aboriginal children were indeed torn from the arms of loving parents by racist police. In saying this, I mean no disrespect to Craig. She has had a film, supported by $5.3 million of taxpayers' money, made of an episode of her life in which she showed extraordinary courage, endurance, and willpower. But it's a film which can't be trusted to tell the whole truth. Who could value its praise? It was 1931, and Molly Craig was just 14 when she and two of her younger cousins, Daisy, 8, and Gracie, 11, were taken from an Aboriginal camp at Jigalong in Western Australia's north and sent to Moore River Native Settlement 2,000 kilometres to the south. These girls were to live with other half-castes and to go to school, learning new skills to help them adapt to non-Aboriginal society. But the girls fled after one night and in an amazing 9-week epic walked home to Jigalong, all but Gracie, that is, who was found by police in Willana. Craig's feat made the papers, but it was not written up in full until 1996 when her daughter, Doris Pilkington, who was herself raised at Moore River, wrote the book on which Noyce had based the film. But Noyce and his scriptwriter didn't stick to the facts Pilkington uncovered. Instead, the story was rewritten and now supports a monstrous falsehood that we have a genocidal past that is, as Noyce's publicity material declares, more cruel than could ever be imagined. Such distortions of the truth, and for what? There are enough cruelties in our past we must confront. The theft of black lands, the half-caste children abandoned by white fathers, and years of neglect of people whose culture and communities are now shattered. There is so much to make good, which is why the lies of the stolen generation activists are unforgivable. The Aboriginal leaders who falsely claim that they were stolen, the writers who exaggerate the number of children removed, the silly compensation cases that collapse, and the slick claims of genocide, all risk making every claim of black suffering seem like a cynical triumph. The truth of our past is hard enough to face. Untruths and exaggerations now will only divide us. Your film shames not us, Philip Noyce, but you. So, remembering at the time, in 2002, the apology speech had not been made. So, I guess we could say that the government hadn't recognised that the stolen generation was a significant issue, that stolen generation did actually happen, that these people did suffer. So I guess this article obviously is a point in history where there was a lot of debate and discussion about whether the stolen generation existed at all. And it wasn't until 2008, which we now know as Sorry Day, is when Kevin Rudd addressed Parliament with his sorry speech and apologised to Indigenous people of all of the wrongs of the past, and particularly the stolen generation. Now, I actually have a YouTube clip of that sorry speech, and that's on Lesson 3's OneNote page, and it's only a little 4-minute video, but if you haven't seen that speech, it is actually really worth seeing, because it's just such a significant point in our history. I remember watching that speech and it brought tears to my eyes too. I thought, for once, politicians, and I don't really love politicians very much, but for once someone had the guts to stand up and recognise an issue and actually do something about it. Okay, so a really changing day for all of us, but that was still yet to come. This movie was out in 2002, and that didn't happen until 6 years later, so there was much debate going on from then. We've read Andrew Boldt's perspective. I'm not going to lie, it makes me angry, actually, his article, but I want you guys to think about his perspective and his representations of the issue and how he's positioning the audience, and I've got some questions here that I need you to do. So they are here. Number 1, what is Boldt's opinion about the film? Number 2, how is he positioning his audience to feel about the historical accuracy of Rabbit Proof Fence? Number 3, I need you to find a few examples of his emotive language that he uses to influence the reader. 4, what does the word genocide mean? What is Boldt's opinion about Noyce portraying a genocidal past? 5, what is Boldt's opinion on the issue of the stolen generations? 6, what impact do journalists such as Andrew Boldt have on writing opinion pieces such as this on Indigenous issues and reconciliation? So that's an important question. And number 7, should Andrew Boldt be allowed to have an opinion on this issue at all? I have a feeling that that question's probably cut off for you, but maybe there is a PowerPoint version of this, so if you can't quite see that, it's on the other PowerPoint as well. And note here, I've got a little speaker, so on the PowerPoint version as well, I've read that article again, so you can listen to it there. You might need to pause this video now and answer those 7 questions before moving on. Okay, so if you've moved on, we are now looking at Christine Olson's perspective. Now, Christine Olson is the screenwriter of Rabbit Proof Fence, so she turned the book into a movie. So she used the book, which is called Follow the Rabbit Proof Fence, written by Doris Pilkington. Now, remember, Doris is Molly Craig's daughter, and Doris also spent time in Moore River Native Settlement. So she spent some time researching this. She talked to many members of the stolen generation, including Doris, about her story. or her mother's story before she wrote the script for the film. So obviously, Christine Olson was really angry at Andrew Boldt's response. So instead of just enjoying a film that showed an amazing story of a young heroine in Molly Craig who walked home from Moore River, he decided to tear it apart and say that it wasn't a good depiction of events. So she actually wrote a really long response back, a letter to the Herald Sun, where she outlines many of the mistakes in his argument and how he's actually untrue. And he's omitting facts or misquoting some of the information that he uses to position the audience to believe his side of the story. I've just got an extract here, and on the next slide, I've got some of the points and the arguments from both parties, both different perspectives. But I'm just going to read to you this extract of the letter, and then there are questions as well. So, letter to the Herald Sun, 2nd of March 2002. From the Rabbit Proof fence writer, Christine Olson. Andrew Boldt, Herald Sun, 14th February 2002, wants to demolish the truth behind Rabbit Proof fence by either selectively quoting or misquoting from some of the historical records available about Molly Craig's story. Molly's story has indeed been extremely well documented by Mr. Neville, the Chief Protector of Aborigines in Western Australia at the time. Andrew Boldt's main argument is that Molly, Daisy and Gracie were not removed from Jigalong because of Mr. Neville's plan to breed out the Aborigine, but to remove them from squalid Aboriginal camps for their own good. Yours sincerely, Christine Olson, writer, co-producer, Rabbit Proof Fence. Now, as I said, this goes on for 4 pages, actually, about different points that Andrew has raised and how he has misquoted and got the information incorrect. I've summarised that for you on the next slide. But what I need you to do now is answer the questions that respond to this text here. So, what is Olson's opinion of Andrew Boldt's article? What does she accuse Boldt of doing? What evidence does Olson use to back up her version of events? And what is her opinion of Boldt's main argument? Question 5. What does this tell us about the importance of different representations in history and how they influence society's thinking about an issue? And should Christine Olson be allowed to have an opinion on the stolen generation? Explain your answer there. Okay, so you'll need to pause the video now and answer those 6 questions for me. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about 2 different perspectives. These 2 people ended up having a big fight on the through the paper about their versions or their attitudes and opinions of the actual film Rabbit Proof Fence and what really happened in history. So the critic, Andrew Boldt, has his full story published in the Herald Sun, and he argues that Rabbit Proof Fence portrays scenes that are factually incorrect. And actually, Christine Olson responds saying that Boldt has admitted the facts and he is selectively picking information to position his audience. So on this table, I'm not going to go through all of it here. You can read through it yourselves. It just talks about 3 different aspects of the film that have been challenged. And in one column, you can see the critic's view. So Andrew Boldt saying what he thinks about those aspects of the film. And then Olson is responding to that. So you can see that this goes on. I think the main point is that what we need to know is it's really important to understand perspective and understand how things are represented, that they only provide a version of events, okay? And that's actually really important in understanding these and how it influences us in society. So just our last point before I run out of time, the film is about the past and the present, but it's also about, how we have power to influence people's ideas through popular culture. And is that a good thing?